Alright, so for the oil change on a Subaru Outback, one of the first things I like to do is break this free, open up the oil fill cap. That way you're going to allow air to go through, so when the oil is sucking out from the bottom, it's got a place to go. That way you don't have any oil getting trapped inside anywhere. Next thing I do with these Subarus, because you got the oil filter on top, you just want to take like a rag. I like these microfiber ones because they seem to pick up dirt real well. A long screwdriver. You just swirl it around. That gets it all cleaned. Blow anything else out. That makes sure we don't get any kind of sand or anything like that inside the motor, because that's what you're going to end up getting. You're going to end up getting quartz. Quartz is sand. It's all over the place. You can see it everywhere. Gets inside the motor, it will damage any kind of metal it rubs up against. And then I break the oil filter open. This is also going to release air, so when you're draining the oil, there's no pockets of old oil stuck in here. It's all going to release out of there. And then they got a oil flowback valve, which sometimes leaks a little bit of oil in there. Not a big deal. I get paper towel and clean that up afterwards. I just want to make sure I got no sand mixed in with that oil. That's why I clean it before I undo this. So next step, we're going to take the new oil filter. I always like to make sure I got the right one. I've absolutely bought the wrong one, even though it was labeled correctly and everything else. It was not the right filter. This one actually comes pre-oiled, which is kind of impressive. The mobile ones are definitely not bad. I get them real cheap at Walmart, so that's why I usually use the mobile one. I also like wicks. Now I'll take the old one out. They usually don't make that much of a mess in there, but it's what it is. Alright, now we can see it's soaked up a bunch of oil, and the reason for the oil on that oil ring is so it doesn't stick to the metal. With these cars, it's not that big of a deal, because you could see if the rubber ring is stuck on it or not. But when you got to go under a car, things like that, sometimes you make the mistake of taking the oil filter off, but the ring stays on there. Make sure it's nice and clean. I'm going to stick it upside down. Hopefully most of that good oil just pours right into the engine. So now we're just going to have to clean all this leftover oil in there. I only hand tighten these. That is more than tight enough. And then just stick this rag in there, soak up all the rest of that oil. So we'll leave that on there. Alright, so next step, it's just your drain plug. 17 millimeter. Some of them are 14. One or the other. Alright. I always want to keep that drain plug free, make sure there's no dirt, sand getting on it. And the one thing is, I like to make sure the engine's warm so that oil comes out quick and fast. Alright, let's see how that drained out real quick. Another thing you'll see is this little crush washer. Supposed to change those every time. I don't really worry about it much. I feel like I check my oil enough that if that was causing some kind of leak, I will catch it and change it then. So I honestly probably reuse that thing 3 or 4 times because I change my oil a lot, but it's only about $2.50 for one of those. So if you want to change it every oil change, probably the best idea. But if not, I've found that if you just don't feel like getting one or can't get a hold of one in time, I don't think they're that important. And I really don't pull that plug on too tight, but I definitely don't leave it loose. And then not a terrible idea to wipe this oil so it doesn't spray all over your exhaust and make it smell. And other than that, we always just make sure that's in there. And we're good to go. We shouldn't have to come back under the car. Alright. Now we can see it's soaked up a bunch of oil. And the reason for the oil on that oil ring is so it doesn't stick to the metal. With these cars, it's not that big of a deal because you could see if the rubber ring is stuck on it or not. But when you got to go under a car, things like that, sometimes you make the mistake of taking the oil filter off, but the ring stays on there. Make sure it's nice and clean. I'm going to stick it upside down. Hopefully most of that good oil just pours right into the engine. So now we're just going to have to clean all this leftover oil in there. I only hand tighten these. That is more than tight enough. And then just stick this rag in there, soak up all the rest of that oil. So we'll leave that on there. Alright, like using my cheap funnels because it keeps you from getting oil on all this other stuff. It ends up getting cooked on there and baked on there. It's starting to, there's a little bit of dirt down here, so it's nice to keep it clean. You got, looks like connectors for the variable valve timing and all that fun stuff. So always want that stuff to work, and you don't want to cover that in oil. So with this car, I got some 530. I'm going to do about 3 quarts of 530 and probably another couple quarts of 020. We'll do 2 more quarts, 020. I like to throw a little bit of 530 in these motors, make the oil a little bit thicker. I guess in Japan and Europe they don't use their fancy lightweight 020 oil. So I've seen these engines recommend both 020 and 530. I happen to have both. So I used what 530 I had. I would say in the summertime 530 is good to use. I would think in the wintertime, if it's cold, maybe a mix. If it's bitter cold, you know, go 020. But either or, I think the biggest thing is make sure you're changing this stuff every 6,000 miles or sooner. So let's take a look at the oil cap. Looks good. I like to sneak my finger in there and steal some of this oil and rub it on any of the rubber seals that touch the metal, because it gets hot and the oil just helps that rubber seal better. Doesn't have to be on super tight. Now we're looking pretty clean inside that little cavity now. Now, doing your own oil changes, it's a huge risk factor, because if you do something wrong, you blow up the motor. These things will cost you about $10,000 to get a good new one replaced in here. That, or you can put used motors in, you know, that's still going to cost you $5 to $7 grand. So not a lot of great options. So just want to make sure that's always on. You always want to double check that. And I always look under the car and just make sure I put the oil plug on tight, which I know I did, but I'm still going to lean down and I'm going to check it. Alright, I do not see any oil dripping. The other thing I do for the insurance, because I don't actually have any insurance that's going to cover this mistake, I check the oil dipstick every time. Now I know for a fact that I've got enough oil in this motor just a touch above that line. I'm happy with that. It's not going to blow up the motor or anything like that. You just don't want it way up here, something crazy like that. That's way too much. I mean, that's pretty high. I like to stay somewhere no more above than that. That's about a half quart extra. I like having a half quart extra. I don't know why other people don't, but that's as long as you're at that top dot, you should be good. And everything's tight. This is tight. Now I will start the motor. Alright, always want to double check that filter. I like to put my hand on it, and if I feel it getting warm, I know that the oil's flowing through it. It's definitely getting warmer instantly, so I know that hot oil is going through it. So everything should check out. Really nothing to worry about if you do every step and just verify that no mistakes were made. You really can't go wrong, and it saves you a ton of money.